Hello, this is Eleanor with Audible Local Ledger. It's Tuesday, March 4th, and I'll be reading some articles from the Nantucket Current. Our first headline: Civic Association proposes restrictions on public's use of Sconset Bluff Walk. John Carl McGrady. The Sconset Civic Association is proposing a set of restrictive regulations for the Sconset Bluff Walk that would limit the public's use of the iconic walking trail. Town administration isn't sure that some of the restrictions are advisable or even legal. The Sconset Civic Association's proposal would restrict access to the public walking path during July and August to 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and install turnstiles at the north and south entrances. Limiting use during peak season is essential for preserving the physical condition of the path, which suffers extensive erosion from foot traffic, runners, bicycles, and strollers, the proposal reads in part. Comments provided by town administration in advance of a select board hearing on the proposal suggest that there is no legal authority to restrict the hours of access to this public way and that a gate or turnstile raises accessibility and maintenance concerns. The Sconset Civic Association is also suggesting hiring bluff rangers to enforce the regulations. The rangers would be paid $50 per hour, a full $20 more than the highest paid community service officer employed by the town, with the cost borne by the Sconset residents, the Sconset Civic Association, and the Sconset Trust. Town administration is similarly skeptical of this proposal. There are concerns that negative interface with bluff rangers may contribute to conflict in the bluff walk, the town administration's comment read in part. A bluff ranger, not employed by the town, would have no enforcement authority. The Sconset Civic Association is also requesting that the town stop promoting the bluff walk as an attraction for the public. Remove promotional references to the path from digital, print, and social media outreach, the recommendation reads under the bullet, Revised Town Website and Publicity, in the association's proposed management plan. With over 1,000 visitors per day in high season, the path is already beyond sustainable capacity. Public messaging should focus solely on the education of the rules for safe and respectful use, not on attracting additional traffic. The town administration claims that recommendation is endorsed and has already been accomplished with information that is in control of the town, although a page on the town's website describes the bluff walk as an exceptional walk on a public footpath along the East Shore bluffs behind private homes. The Sconset Civic Association's proposal has the support of the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, a minor town advisory board. The bluff walk has a long history. A similar path was described as early as 1775 and may have existed much longer. In 1892, developer William Flagg conveyed the land that comprises the current path, and the town now holds it in trust as a public way. The legality of the bluff walk was reaffirmed in a decision by the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts in 1930. The management plan proposed by the Sconset Civic Association would also install split-rail fencing where appropriate to protect the path and the bluff and add additional signage to make it clearer where visitors should enter the bluff walk. The task ahead now is to balance the preservation of public access and thoughtful maintenance of the path with the privacy and quiet enjoyment of abutting property owners as a key goal, a memo from the Sconset Civic Association reads in part. The Select Board will consider the association's request on Wednesday, March 4th, during its regular meeting at the community room in the town's public safety facility at 5:30 p.m. Next headline: Nantucket has lots of bylaws, but are they enforced? By John Carl McGrady. Weak enforcement is one of the most commonly cited causes of nearly every contentious issue on Nantucket, from concerns surrounding short-term rentals to the illegal use of lawn fertilizer, and from the proliferation of McMansions to the rash of dangerous e-bike accidents in recent years. Over the last 8 months, the Current has tracked dozens of bylaw violations, spoken with numerous public officials, investigated a number of ongoing lawsuits, and ultimately filed a public records request in an attempt to understand just how deep the problem goes and if anything can be done to solve it. The answer to these questions is complicated, messy, and difficult to pin down. Last August, as Nantucket languished in the drought conditions that have yet to subside, and the town recovered from a nearly catastrophic municipal water pump failure, one Nantucket property owner took a rather lax approach to the crisis. Instead of working to conserve water and protect the island's fragile aquifer, he told Water Department Director Mark Willett he would rather just write a check, pay the fine, and be done with it. We had a gentleman, and I'm not going to name names, who said, "Just fine me, I'll write a check," Willett said. I said, "Thank you for being part of the community." Ultimately, no one was ever fined for violating the mandatory water use restrictions over the summer. This comment, while unusually direct, represents one of the most stubborn and widespread problems facing Nantucket's local government. It is remarkably difficult to enforce the town's numerous well-intentioned rules, regulations, and bylaws. Even when they are enforced, the punishments are often so minor that violators have almost no incentive to follow the law. Enforcement is one of the town's greatest challenges, Nantucket Land and Water Council Executive Director Emily Molden told The Current. On and off the record, numerous town employees, elected and appointed officials, political advocates, and nonprofit leaders say the same thing. The enforcement problem has left existing short-term rental regulations underused and routinely hamstrings proposals for further regulations. It has also handicapped efforts to reduce fertilizer use on island, enabled a string of dangerous e-bike accidents, empowered alleged violations of zoning and land use bylaws, weakened a wide array of regulations aimed at combating environmental degradation and climate change, and is alleged to be one major reason for the pattern of demolition by neglect, where property owners allow historic buildings to deteriorate to the point that they can be legally demolished. A detailed review of Nantucket's existing enforcement strategies conducted by The Current revealed three primary problems. First, a lack of enforcement personnel and understaffed municipal departments leaves the town unable to identify many violations. Second, when a violation is identified, violators often avoid consequences for years or even dodge them entirely. Third, even when violators do have to face consequences, they are often trivial and easy to chalk up to the cost of doing business on Nantucket. The practice known as demolition by neglect offers a unique look at all three issues. Last August 18th, demolition began on 12 Atlantic Avenue, a 125-year-old home that was formerly part of Nantucket's historic New Guinea neighborhood, home to many of Nantucket's Black and Cape Verdean residents in the 18th and 19th centuries. The demolition was approved by the Nantucket Building Commissioner and never went through the Historic District Commission. Demolishing a 125-year-old house on Nantucket isn't usually so simple. But once a house has fallen into such disrepair that it cannot be salvaged, demolition gets much easier. Sometimes, homeowners intentionally allow their houses to deteriorate so they can gain approval to knock them down. This is demolition by neglect. In theory, Nantucket's minimum maintenance bylaw is intended to stop that. Adopted by the town in 2004, the bylaw requires the owners of contributing historic structures to take at least the minimum steps necessary to prevent the deterioration of foundations, exterior walls, roofs, chimneys, and support structures. So why doesn't it work? First, violations of the minimum maintenance bylaw are often not reported until it's too late. For example, by the time the owners of an old Nantucket Electric Company building sought permission from the HDC to demolish the historic structure located at 10 New Whale Street last year, it had already begun to literally disintegrate, allowing the property owners to argue it couldn't be saved. Decades of neglect left the building cracked and crumbling before the HDC ever ruled on its fate. At that point, any fines levied for violation of the bylaw wouldn't save the building. The members of the HDC don't drive around the island cataloging potential instances of demolition by neglect. No one does. Multiple members of the HDC have reiterated to The Current and in public meetings that the bylaw can only be properly enforced if citizens raise the alarm when they see a building falling into disrepair. Much easier said than done. There isn't a facility within town government for there to be an HDC person with a little siren and a light on top of their car to find these structures, HDC Chair Stephen Welch said. This is a community response. The HDC staff respond on a complaint basis to neglect. It's a problem the HDC faces often. In 2022, after approving a building at 43 Kendrick Street that commissioners initially called frightening, the HDC members found themselves second-guessing their own decision. They said the applicant had led them to believe the building wouldn't be visible, but no one actually checked, and when the neighbors complained, the HDC found that the reality they saw on the ground didn't match the plans they had received. Clearly, the reason I brought this up is the whole idea of applicants coming in and saying, "This won't be visible from a public way, and we take it on faith," HDC Vice Chair Ray Pohl said at the time. And in large part, we do that because we have such a heavy agenda, and that doesn't seem to be getting any shorter. If we have to go out and research every application that we have in front of us, we'd be here until the cows come home. More recently, the HDC has claimed that its reliance on complaint-based enforcement is one of the reasons that there are so many unpermitted cattle grates and deer fences around the island, an issue at the center of an ongoing appeal of a decision to block one particular fence. The same problem applies to many other bylaws. Natural Resources Director Jeff Carlson has argued for years that this is a big part of the reason that Nantucket has struggled to curb the flow of harmful nitrogen into the island's harbors, which environmental leaders say has devastated the local eelgrass population and weakened the already fragile scallop fishery. Laws exist to regulate fertilizer, one of the main culprits, but they are almost never enforced. I think the town, and really all of us, could have done a better job to date in dealing with fertilizer, Carlson said. It's something that we need to do better on. Facing the futility of enforcement, Carlson has advocated extensively for a cultural shift, one that leads to landscapers and homeowners alike deciding not to use fertilizer by choice. Regulation will not work again if the people that live here and the residents that are here and the people that own properties and the people that do landscaping are not willing to participate, Carlson said. We can develop programs until we're blue in the face and roll them out, but the last thing that anyone wants is to have the big bad town telling you what you can do on your own property. Select Board member and former Board of Health Chair Malcolm McNabb has made similar comments about the island's fertilizer regulations, pointing out how enormously difficult they would be to enforce in practice. We have fertilizer regulations. Well, you can't go on people's property. We often make regulations that make us feel good, but then we can't enforce them, he said. And it's not just fertilizer. Health Director Roque Miramont has been clear in a number of meetings that he doesn't feel the health department should be responsible for existing and proposed regulations governing large gatherings and short-term rental bylaws, in large part because his department simply does not have the staff to identify violations and fine violators. There's plenty of things that probably no one ever finds out about because they're hidden, Conservation Commission Chair Seth Engelborg told The Current. We do rely mostly on the public and private citizens mentioning, "Hey, I think there's a violation." Such a holistic approach, however, is probably unfair. One reason it is so difficult to respond when violations are noticed is that there is no single enforcement body on Nantucket Island. One board that does keep track of violations is the Conservation Commission. As of September they had issued 31 enforcements since 2020, including 7 along Baxter Road, home to the controversial Sconset Beach Preservation Fund geotube erosion control project. The geotube installation itself is a study in the struggles of Nantucket's regulatory regime. Despite the numerous violations alleged against the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund and an actual order for removal, the geotubes remain on the bluff, and it doesn't seem likely they will be removed anytime soon. In fact, the town has partnered with the Sconset Beach Preservation Fund on a proposed expansion of the array. Massachusetts law sets hard caps on many of the fines Nantucket is empowered to level against violators. In many cases, that limit is $300 per offense, unless a special state law says otherwise. With each day the offense is considered a separate offense. Many feel that $300 isn't enough to deter violators, and in many cases, fines are even smaller. Often, changing these laws to allow heftier fines more suited to Nantucket in 2025 would require state-level action that doesn't seem likely. Without that action, the town's hands are tied. Even if they hire dozens of enforcement personnel, stuck with every possible enforcement action through the inevitable legal quagmires, and issued the maximum penalties allowed under Massachusetts laws, it might not be enough to deter many violators. If the understaffing issue was resolved, determined violators would still be able to tie up cases in the courts for years, straining the town's already stretched resources and incurring heavy costs on taxpayers. And then there's the limits imposed by local and state law. Fines of $200, $300, or even $11,000 are a small price to pay for many of Nantucket's wealthier residents and more established companies. At the end of the day, is there a financial impact? I guess it depends on how much money you have, Engelborg said. In the end, Carlson may be right. Perhaps the only way to effectively enforce Nantucket's regulations is to rely instead on a cultural shift spurred on by education and effective communication. It's one thing to pay a fine. It's another to bear the scorn of your neighbors. As a reminder, you're listening to Audible Local Ledger with some stories from the Nantucket Current. The next headline: Island author Nat Philbrick to be honored with Athenaeum's inaugural Luminary Award. Island author and historian Nathaniel Philbrick will be honored with the Nantucket Athenaeum's inaugural Luminary Award this summer. Established by the Board of Trustees, the Luminary Award recognizes individuals whose work has made lasting contributions to the civic, cultural, intellectual, or moral life of the nation. The award will be presented during the Athenaeum's first Luminary Award dinner, its new flagship summer fundraiser, on July 10, 2026, at the Nantucket Hotel. The dinner is also part of the library's commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Philbrick will deliver a featured address titled 250 Years Later, American Independence and the Advent of George Washington. One of America's most respected historians, Philbrick has shaped contemporary understanding of the Revolutionary era and the nation's maritime heritage, the Athenaeum stated in its announcement. A longtime Nantucket resident and former Athenaeum trustee, Philbrick has maintained a deep relationship with the institution, contributing to its intellectual life and reflecting the island's historic role in America's maritime story. Nat's extraordinary literary achievements and long-standing connection to Nantucket embody the spirit of this award, said the Athenaeum's executive director, Leslie Malcolm. His work has deepened our understanding of the American experiment and reflects the civic values the Athenaeum seeks to promote. Board Chair Sam Flax added, "We are proud to inaugurate this award by honoring a writer whose work stands in the tradition of the great American thinkers who have appeared on our stage, from Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau to Frederick Douglass." Philbrick is the author of multiple New York Times bestsellers, including In the Heart of the Sea, Mayflower, Bunker Hill, Valiant Ambition, In the Hurricane's Eye, The Genius of George Washington and the Victory of Yorktown, and Travels with George. His work has earned the National Book Award and broad critical acclaim for its narrative clarity and scholarly rigor. He was recently featured in Ken Burns' 12-hour PBS documentary, The American Revolution, and his forthcoming book, The Rush, California Gold, the Civil War, and the Making of the Modern World, will be released in October. The Luminary Award Dinner will serve as a cornerstone of the Athenaeum's 2026 programming, and the library stated that the event is expected to become one of the island's premier cultural gatherings. Proceeds will support the Athenaeum's year-round public programming, collections, and educational initiatives. Next headline: Board of Health discusses pros and cons of artificial turf with ban under consideration, by John Carl McGrady. In a wide-ranging discussion Tuesday, the Board of Health heard arguments for and against the use of artificial turf playing fields on Nantucket. No votes were taken, and it remains unclear whether the Board of Health will institute an island-wide ban on turf. Over the course of roughly 4 hours, a broad selection of experts, many obtained by the Nantucket Public Schools and the Nantucket Land and Water Council, laid out the benefits and risks of artificial turf, covering much of the same ground as a prior series of debates before the school committee. The issue will be discussed again at the Board of Health's regularly scheduled meeting on March 19th. The roundtable discussion was scheduled after the Board of Health announced that it would consider a ban on turf in the wake of a school committee vote to endorse an athletic facilities upgrade that includes an artificial turf playing field at Vito Capizzo Stadium. Consultants, doctors, scientists, researchers, and other subject matter experts went back and forth in a lengthy hearing moderated by the town's Health and Human Services Director, Jericho Melee. While the Board of Health is not ruling on the NPS field specifically, much of the testimony heard Tuesday was focused on the merits of the particular proposal the school committee endorsed. Experts discussed the specific materials proposed for the field, the tests that will be used to determine if it contains any of the toxic so-called forever chemicals known as PFAS, the proposed stormwater management plan, and expected usage patterns, among other details. Still, even if the Board of Health's decision on whether to ban turf is made based on the details of the plan presented by NPS, it will apply to any other potential turf fields on Nantucket as well. The two sides of the debate remain much the same as they have since the school committee first endorsed a plan featuring a natural grass field last fall before backtracking under pressure from the community. Those against artificial turf argue that it contains harmful substances, including microplastics. Those in favor of turf argue that the dangers are overstated and that the turf is far more durable than natural grass, allowing for much greater use before posing a danger to athletes. Much of the debate centers on PFAS. In the past, artificial turf contained PFAS. Now the debate is murkier. NPS consultants claim that the materials for the proposed field at Vito Capizzo Stadium will include no intentionally added PFAS, which could actually be safer than natural grass, considering the background level of PFAS present in Nantucket soil. On the other side of the debate, some anti-PFAS experts claim that the tests used to make those claims aren't sensitive enough to detect all PFAS and that the proposed artificial turf material is likely to add some PFAS to the environment. Next headline: $300,000 donated for new preschool tuition assistance pilot program on Nantucket. The Community Foundation for Nantucket unveiled a new preschool tuition assistance pilot program on Tuesday, with 3 funders committing a total of $300,000 to help offset the high cost of preschool for the island's working families. The funding will provide direct tuition assistance to any Nantucket family with 3 or 4-year-olds enrolled in a licensed Nantucket preschool program during the 26-27 school year. The program is designed to serve approximately 30 to 60 families, with payments made directly to providers and quarterly reporting to ensure accountability and measurable impact, CFN announced. Child care costs on Nantucket can exceed $20,000 annually, placing significant strain on working families and the island's workforce, CFN stated in its announcement. By providing up to $10,000 per eligible child in tuition assistance, this pilot aims to stabilize families, strengthen early education access, and support local employers who depend on a reliable year-round workforce. The 3 funders of the pilot program are the Community Foundation for Nantucket, through a community investment grant from the Nantucket Fund, a private community foundation donor-advised fund holder, and the Nantucket Golf Club Foundation. Each committed $100,000 to launch the first year of the Preschool Family Support Pilot Program, which will be a partnership with the Town of Nantucket's Health and Human Services Department. Sunny Daly, Executive Director of CFN, told the Current that the town's Health and Human Services Department will administer the application process and that there is no income qualification for the families applying. The town will release the official application details soon, she said. This is exactly the kind of initiative that philanthropy is uniquely positioned to catalyze, Daly said in a statement released with the program announcement. By bringing donors together, we can provide immediate relief to families while building the data, outcomes, and community support needed to transition a locally tailored preschool subsidy model into a lasting public investment. The new preschool family support pilot program follows a proven model already implemented in 9 Cape Cod communities, and the hope is to transition to sustainable municipal funding beginning in FY28, subject to town meeting approval. The Health and Human Services Department will administer the program, including eligibility verification, direct-to-provider payments, and quarterly and annual reporting on outcomes. The collective goal of the 3 funders is not only to support families in the short term, but to demonstrate the impact and feasibility of a locally tailored preschool subsidy model that could be adopted through municipal funding beginning in FY28. This collaboration reflects a shared belief that investing in early childhood education strengthens the entire community, said Isabella Day, Administrative Director of the Nantucket Golf Club Foundation. We are proud to stand alongside the Community Foundation and a committed private donor to help launch a program that can create long-term structural change. If approved for municipal funding in 2027, Nantucket would join 9 Cape Cod towns that have successfully implemented similar programs, ensuring sustained support for working families for years to come. Last year, the town appropriated a total of $783,000 in Health and Human Services grant funding to 15 different agencies and nonprofits to provide services to the island community. Daly, however, said any future municipal funding for the preschool tuition assistance program is not expected to come from that portion of the town's budget, and that other sources would be used. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening.